States, Europe, Asia, and the rest of the world, engaging all Dominicans at home and abroad on our agriculture, our economy, our foreign relations, our justice system, our governance, our international competitiveness, our education, our world class festivals and entertainment, sports, politics. Conversation on the
Good
Global
evening.
View on Q.
Good
Tune in,
evening.
call us.
Good evening to you, great friend and the internet world and abroad. Thank you. Let me ask my panelists to please mute your mics and then maybe studio as well. Get the feedback that's coming through at the moment. But thank you for United 95. This is the global warm welcome. Very welcome to all of you. Q family, home globally. I'm still getting a bit of feedback, and I'm not sure what is causing that. I'm not know if something mic on. If they do, they might want to just mute their mic. So I don't know what can help us, but I appreciate that so that we can get a good recording and our audio very clean sound. So this, I'm Sheridan Craig, Mr. G. This 6th January 2024, the third Tuesday of 2024, and it's 8 p.m. But 8:03 p.m. The big stage. We're live on the frequencies on Facebook and YouTube. Please follow Q95 Radio. The on-your phone numbers are on the homepage of our website at www.q95da.com. Please share the live, like our pages, get the latest breaking news and reviews only on Q95, the big station. So we continue to revive the spirit of graciousness, love and peace and prosperity and unity among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. So it is in fact our second Global View on Q conversation for 2024. And along with you, our Q family listeners, our live radio on Facebook, on YouTube, Friends of Dominica, and my distinguished guest tonight, who will be Dr. Irving Andre. He will join us a little later. Former IMF financial economist and UWB Team Dominica leader, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, Dominica Freedom Party leader, Bernardito and Gabriel Christian, Attorney Gabriel Christian, who will be joining us a little bit later. I want to thank all of you for tuning in and thank you guys for being here with us tonight to have another conversation. Here are some talking points. First thing is that, our health minister, Kasani Laville, his public comment on the alleged chaotic mismanagement of the healthcare system has prompted widespread calls for his resignation and for that of the hospital board, and in fact, for the resignation of the entire government. People are asking for them to go on the grounds that no country should be governed with that level of incompetence. And this has reinvigorated the imperative, appropriate, urgent reform of Dominica's electoral and campaign finance laws and regulations, which actually started on Friday, and we'll talk about that a little later as we go along. And we'll likely continue with some momentum because elections have consequences, and tainted elections result in very bad consequences, such as a failed economy, lack of investment, and education system on life support. And I'm getting some feedback coming in again. An education system on life support for non-payment of student university fees. Being the order of the day and on full display is poor healthcare, escalating crimes, poor policing, a limping justice system that is now on trial, devastated local farms and agriculture as a whole, dwindling agribusiness and manufacturing, corruption, fake ambassadors, and glaring problems with foreign offshore companies and investors, glaring international airport construction issues, incomplete five-star hotels, declining social values and moral decay, nasty business on display in plain sight at high levels, while sporting activities and housing and hosting of sports events are casualties. We are now constantly reminded of the pain of divisive, tainted politics and the governance failures in 2023 and for years before. But we look forward to 2024, 25, and beyond to new energy, new potential, new possibilities, and progress under new governance. We are still connecting the dots of the occurrences from December 2022, since the DLP regime called what many describe as a sham snap general election, contrary to the advice of the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, boycotted, of course, by the opposition forces in Dominica. We question the widely perceived secretive process of rewriting the new electoral laws and regulations. We condemn alleged corruption in the CBI program and the chains that continue to imprison Dominicans for 20 years due to electoral machinations, the absence of justice, and the lack of good governance. So tonight we will make suggestions as to where Dominica should go from here to see Dominicans prosper, rather than continue to see more land grabbing by foreign nationals, millions of dollars being sent out by foreign contractors and workers, while Dominica's entrepreneurs and our talented youth are being displaced and are losing their heritage. We are already witnesses and feeling the effects of declining passport sales revenues from the CBI program. As I asked the last time, will it prove to be problematic for this DLP regime to pay public officers and NEP workers on time during this carnival season and beyond? But now our national bank has to provide a guarantee of $13 million for a U.S. firm to build a geothermal energy project. We must have national unity now, all hands on one deck, to secure good caring governance in our nature island. But meantime, here are a couple of questions. Have Dominican police investigations into the circumstances surrounding the brutal murder of two philanthropic French-Canadian investors already gone cold? We're not hearing anything about this. Are any real police investigations going on into the 16 brutal murders of Dominicans by other Dominicans in 2023? We appear to have become numb to these murders of our own by our own. And what is the outcome of police investigation into the theft, allegedly, of some 9 unsecured police guns at an unsecured police station in St. Joseph? Where are the guns now as we speak? Where are they anyway? Has local enforcement in Dominica requested the assistance of the international press and the foreign law enforcement agencies like the FBI, like Canadian RCMP, Scotland Yard, French police, and other law enforcement agencies to help resolve these crimes, to bring closure for all the grieving families and concerned Dominicans? These devastating events are partly the result of bad governance. And all of these disastrous indicators and escalating negative trends make it absolutely critical that we embrace the imperative to urgently and appropriately reform our electoral and campaign finance laws and regulations without any further delay, in a manner that will in fact yield free and fair elections on a level playing field in the next general election and return Dominica to good governance in order to enable us to make ourselves truly economically independent after 45 years of self-rule. But we are witnessing decline in personal household incomes, land and home ownership, and living wage employment, escalation of crimes, and economic devastation. I'm convinced that it is high time for a change in governance. I've been saying so for a while. Every day, Dominicans are feeling a stronger, painful pinch in their pockets. My guests, Dr. Irvin Andre, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, Mr. Bernard Ito, and a little later on, Tony Gabriel Christian. And you, our cherished listeners, our viewers and callers, will make the case for the mobilization of large gatherings of Dominicans with multitudes of strong, crystal clear voices demonstrating the people's power and demanding change. This now appears to be the only way to bring back good governance, to fix the economy, to restore respect to Dominica's devastated image and reputation caused by corrupt passport transactions and major due diligence failures. But according to Attorney Gabriel Christian, So we must now move to return to democratic governance in Dominica in 2024 and help shape the fate of our beloved homeland. Dominicans at home and abroad must act wisely and resolutely to secure the democracy and the prosperity that we desire. So tonight, my brothers and sisters out there, our listeners, we invite you, our Q family and friends of Dominica, to stay with us on our radio and television frequencies in Dominica, on our live stream on the internet, www.q95da.com, on Facebook and YouTube and all the platforms. And have your say tonight, as you do every Tuesday, on the Global View on Q with us. Appreciate all of you. A big thank you, of course, to our healthcare providers, our frontline workers, police and fire officers, teachers, doctors, nurses, and other public and private sector patriots at home and abroad. We welcome every Dominican and friend of Dominica to the Global View on Q. We embrace you wherever you are tonight, in every nook and cranny, every village, in every community at home and abroad, in the region and globally. Thank you, Sherwin, for keeping us on the air. Thank you, Lambi, on the console at Q95, directing the traffic. We will take your calls a bit later. The People's Voice, as you know, is always priority on Q and on the Global View. Call us anytime, and during the program, and Lambi will signal us to take your call. So let's get started. And tonight I'm giving the first word to get the ball rolling to our distinguished Dr. Thompson Fontaine. And to make your opening presentation, I hope that you and my other distinguished guests will all touch on the question of electoral reform, corruption of the CBI program, among other things. So it is, in fact, a brand new year. Let's have a great Dominican family conversation tonight about taking meaningful actions now for the future of our beloved homeland and the future of the upcoming generations. I yield to you, Dr. Fontaine.
Yes, a very good evening to you, Mr. G, and to Lambi, and of course, it's my privilege to share this platform with distinguished gentleman from Dominica, the leader of the Dominica Freedom Party, Mr. Bernardito. It's great to have you, bro. And let me say a very special good night to all of Dominica, all those who are tuned in. There are many of us already on social media that are tuned in to the Global View on Q. And it's a great opportunity for us to have a conversation. I said it's important that we talk and we discuss. I know people say, time for talking is over, but I believe there's always room for a level-headed discussion of the issues that impact us. And one of the serious issues we are faced with, of course, is that of electoral reform, or the lack of electoral reform in Dominica. Because after all, elections do have consequences. Because now, after 33 years, we are saddled with a government that has clearly failed the people of Dominica. We had a very prolonged discussion last night on the healthcare situation in Dominica, the fact that all elective surgeries have been stopped, lack of drugs, the state of the health centers in Dominica, the fact that it's difficult to retain trained professionals within the health sector, and just the overall neglect that we've seen, the politicizing of the hospital board and so on. And there is just so much that is going on, that with the fact, if you look also at the fact that this government apparently is owing, I understand, upwards of $65 million to local contractors and local vendors. And the government paper is being run away from. There was a time when people would be happy to hold an IOU from the government. No more. People have given up on the government, and they're literally docking our government. The government is putting a major strain on one of the two banks we have in Dominica right now, the National Bank of Dominica. And I would not be surprised if it comes a day when the government of Dominica begins to borrow from our credit unions. You heard it here first on Global View on Q. That's a very real possibility, because as the traditional areas dry up, because they've reached their limits, as I understand it, in terms of overdrafts and loans facilities at the National Bank of Dominica. As that dries up, then they will look for other avenues. Where else? Where can you run? Well, the credit union is the one, and the government begins to borrow from the credit union with the same attitude of non-repayment. then that could have a major impact on the health sector, on the financial sector of the country. So I'm saying all of this to say that governance matters. And when we select a government, we need to be careful that we're putting in place people that can really do a job for us, that they can be our servants. We have a situation where this government is anything but a servant of the people. A government, for example, that appears to be one of several levels above the average Dominican. And that to me is not good. You know, we do not have a working government for the people of Dominica. The complete neglect of the agriculture sector to the point where it is difficult to get bananas. I mean, I bought a hand of bananas for $10 a couple of days ago in Dominica. And, you know, and the bananas are very small, you know. These are bananas we used to reject years ago. I think they used to call them dwarf Cavendish and you know, will not be accepted. Now that's what we have to resort to in Dominica. I'm saying that to say that it's really bad with the agriculture sector because of the neglect by this government. And you know, you can go on to name so many areas of the economy where things appear literally to be falling apart. And that's what we have. We have a situation where things are falling apart in Dominica, and it has everything to do with the kind of government we have in place. And that's why it is so critical for electoral reform. That is why it's so important that we have a level playing field, that the government does not impose or force itself, which is what has happened in the past. The government of the Labour Party has, at least for the past 2 elections, forced itself upon the people of Dominica through very devious practices of bringing in voters and manipulating the electoral system, knowing, targeting constituencies where the margins are thin and so on, and you know, just really making a mockery of the electoral system. So we are saying that needs to change. We are saying that as a starting point, that we need to have electoral reforms. And even as the Prime Minister prepares to demit office, as he continues to insist that he will this year, I think it would be good for him as a lasting legacy that the electoral reforms go through Parliament. And not only that, but the electoral reforms that guarantees at the very minimum those 3 things: that you have a clean voters list that reflects the residency criteria so that every single Dominican who is eligible to vote can vote and can register to vote. That's number one. Secondly, that you have a means, a national voter ID card, identification card, which identifies you for a unique voter ID number that allows you access to voting. And then thirdly, that you have access to the national radio station. These 3 things, as a very minimum, must be in any legislation going forward to Parliament. And we hope and pray that this legislation happens quickly, and that the people of Dominica can go about the business of choosing a government of their own choice, their own choosing, and not have a government thrust down the throat or forced upon them. But at the end of the day, what we have is the situation currently in Dominica, where the country is becoming more and more ungovernable. It's not recognizable. It's almost like the country is on remote control. You wonder who is in charge, who is calling the shots. People appear confused. Ministers appear confused about their role, their responsibilities, whether they can speak to certain issues or not. You know, it is really beyond comprehension what we have in Dominica today. And as a result, at the end of the day, the people of Dominica are suffering. The people of Dominica are hurting. The economy is in shambles. And I can only see dark days ahead for this country until we have a change of government.
Yeah, but Thompson, before I move away from you, electoral reform, these consultations have been going on for some time now, right? I had a series of consultations. Many private sector groups, organizations, political parties participated in that. They made some very strong recommendations after much deliberation, serious deliberations, and they made some very strong pointed recommendations in keeping with what is considered the best practices in the region and worldwide in democracies. And some of the things you mentioned are part of the recommendations that were made. We are at a junction now where, and we heard from Hillary Shillingford on Friday night, who was a member of the Electoral Commission, that the report from Sir Dennis Barron has been with them for 7 months, and I don't think the Electoral Commission has even looked at that report. It has met to look at that report, and that's what I gathered that it said. But there is a somewhat secretive process going on now of rewriting those reports. In other words, all these recommendations that were made, we heard the government operatives at those consultations. Now they have everybody's recommendations and somebody's putting it together. We have no idea what is happening. What is likely to happen? What are the political parties in particular looking to do now to mobilize people to ensure that what comes out of this particular exercise that's going on now of rewriting those recommendations, putting them into a draft bill to be presented to Parliament? Obviously, all the stakeholders will want to ensure that their recommendations are reflected in this bill that will go to Parliament. What is it exactly the political parties and the electoral reform, the coalition groups, all the members of those groups, what exactly are going to do to ensure that their recommendation reflected there, and then when that goes to the Electoral Commission, that it contains those recommendations in it?
Yeah, so you may recall that over the past year, that there were lots of efforts on the part of the opposition, the Electoral Reform Coalition, the United Workers' Party, and others to really push through that issue of electoral reform. So there were rallies held, there were marches held, and so on, and different consultations across the country. And every effort was made to really insist exactly what should be there. We participated in a very important consultation that was organized by the ERC again, where we were able to put forward our detailed proposals to the government. We had a huge rally between the bridges. There was also a very important march and so on. These were all actions that were taken last year to really make the point that we needed to get electoral reform. And for a while, it appeared as if the government was listening, because at the end of all of what transpired, they held their own consultations, and the government promised that out of this, they would really do the legislation. Now, we are hearing different things. We are hearing that the legislation has been written up, and we would really insist that whatever legislation, whatever draft legislation that is to be submitted to Parliament, that before it goes to Parliament, that we be allowed an opportunity to review it, to ensure that everything that we've been talking about is in fact reflected there. And I think it's very important for us to understand that electoral reform is not simply about one party or the other, because today this government is in office, tomorrow they're out of office. So they would want to have something that they can guarantee that when they're out of office, that the chances of coming back in office is just as good as the party in office. So, when we talk about doing the right thing, it is not so much about us as a party, but it is more about the protecting or preserving the country's democracy. And I believe that we have to be, as a party, we have to be prepared to take whatever further actions are necessary to really make the point that we need electoral reform, and we want it not anyway, but the three things that I spoke about as a very minimum. Of course, there are also issues of campaign finance reform and so on that we could talk about. But I believe that as a starting point, the things that will ensure that we have a level playing field must be part of any legislation going forward.
Yes, Bernard, let me come to you. And well, let me just say hello to you. I mean, Bernard, I think we spoke already for the year. So
sure.
I think you're already having a happy new year. So I'm not going to even bother to wish that for you now. But let me get your opening thoughts, Bernard, and then I would like you to comment on the whole question of what the process as it's taking place right now on electoral reform. Well, towards getting us electoral reform before something goes to Parliament. And I wanted to, while I'm making your remarks, I wanted to ask you, just as I asked Thompson, what exactly is the Freedom Party doing to try to mobilize its supporters and basically meeting people, or is it meeting people and discussing and organizing and mobilizing and joining, asking people to join the electoral coalition thing and so on to get the results that you're looking for? So maybe while you're making your opening remarks, you might want to comment on that, because I think tonight we have to set a clear path to ensure that the reforms that you get, not of the laws only, but also the regulations, that they're the appropriate laws that are going to result in free and fair elections. So your thoughts with that?
All right. So good evening again to my fellow gentlemen here. Dr. Fontaine and yourself, Mr. G. Of course, always a pleasure to talk to you all. And I think we have to keep the dialogue going. I think unless people like us keep the dialogue going, it's down a very dark hole. And so we have a responsibility, I think, to keep leading, to keep fighting, to keep talking, to keep discussing, to keep the relevant issues alive, to keep Dominica afloat, as it were. I think if the people like us were to fade away, we would rapidly sink into some deep hole we may not come back from. So, like all of us on this panel, I'm just happy to be part of that fight. It has to continue. My thoughts really on what's going on with this government, it's broke. I mean, you can look at things, one thing after the other, and you see this government is cash strapped. This government does not have money. This government could not afford to pay the tuition of students at Midwestern State University, even after many attempts were made to make deals for them. I had conversations with the leadership of the university. They proposed cutting the bill in half, having them pay half. Then they proposed different financing options, $100,000 every few months. The government still couldn't meet that. The authorities there, since we have a close relationship from my many years mentoring and developing that program, were aghast. They're like, Bernard, what's going on? We're doing everything. In fact, we're not even hearing from the government. They're simply ignoring us. And so it's clear to me that this government does not have the money to even pay $100,000 to rescue students from not dropping out and being allowed to continue on with their education after they've sacrificed many years of their lives. Some of them even came back home. Some of them are stressed. Now the government is trying something, but it's a fearful thing. Every week they're stressed. Will the government come through or not? When you look at that, after requesting an international cricket match, World Cup match, the government couldn't pony up a little bit of money to make that happen. They blame it on operational inefficiencies, which in itself is a shame. We should be prepared. We should be able to, if we can't pull off hosting as a nation a World Cup cricket match, what can we pull off? Can we pull off geothermal? Can we pull off building knowledge economy? These things work. These things, expertise and creativity. But we can't even host a match, and we don't have the money to host a cricket match. You look at the energy sector; they can't keep the lights on. You look at the NEP workers; they can't pay them. In fact, I hear and understand NEP payers have to be taking their $5 from their pocket to buy gas to do the work for the government. So you look up and down, and everywhere it tells you. Of course, we know the situation with them owing millions of dollars to vendors at the hospital, and then cowardly blaming the director of the medical director and throwing her under the bus. But that's typical. We also know they could not afford to pony up the money to complete the geothermal after over $150 million have been invested in that. They can't find a few more bucks. Now they need to go take a loan so that they could try to get this thing going. And of course, they will saddle us with the debt when they finance it that way. And investors want a large return. And the cost of energy is actually going to go up for that financing mechanism. And then you look at, prior to that, they had the problems with rubies. They owed millions of dollars for petrol and so forth, and were inflexible to adjust the rates the cut they were getting from taxes, so that because they were so cash strapped, they were afraid if even a penny was lost that way, they would collapse, and the rubies went away. But they had to come back and do it now. So everywhere you look, this government is cash strapped. This government is scrambling, and this is a travesty, because no government in the history of Dominica has been able to raise as much money, has been able to get in as much money, billions of dollars. Estimates run from anywhere from $7 to $9 billion. And now this government is scrambling to pay $100,000. Where the heck is the money? What happened to all that money? Why are we now in this sort of financial condition where we are? And even if you don't have the cash on hand, show us the investments that you made with that cash. That an investment means it now generates a return, and the return on that investment should carry the economy forward, should carry your recurring expenditures forward, should be able to cover that. You should have positive cash flow, enough from those investments to cover your recurrent expenditures. That's just basic business 101. So what happened to that money? It is an incredible situation that we face, and I like Thompson says, the next step is maybe borrowed from the credit unions. That may very well be true, but I suspect there's a next step after that. I mean, I suspect some level of economic Armageddon will soon be upon us. This government will soon run out of options and will have to fess up. The emperor has no clothes. There's no money there. It's gone. Did someone take it? Did the various entities that they have used to funnel funds into secret accounts and so forth, stash it overseas? Did someone abscond with that money? Did something not work out? What's going on behind the scenes? Is someone threatening to expose something and not release the money? I'm speculating, but we don't know. What we do know is that the government has no money. The emperor has no clothes. The emperor is naked. And soon, I suspect the emperor will have no choice but to walk down the road to Tuni for all to see. So that is where we are in terms of our financial situation. It's a very, very dire situation and concerning. And they're trying to, in fact, I see the police officers driving all over the place, looking, hunting down people who owes us tickets. They want to get some little revenue in. Any little thing they can find to get a little money in there. They're all over the place. It's ridiculous. It's comical. But not comical for the rest of us. It's a dire existential situation for us, because once that economy collapses and we know there's no productive capacity, the only thing propping it up is those revenues from passport sales. They have done nothing. So once that revenue dries up, we it's economic Armageddon, and that's a frightening thought.
Well,
go ahead, Mr. J.
No, you go ahead, Bernard. Go ahead.
I was just going to touch briefly on the issue with the electoral reform. I think Thompson covered it. We covered it. You talked about it. We understand the importance of electoral reform. We understand all the work that has gone there. In my presentation in the consultations, I basically, by the second day I gave up on this thing. I basically said this is a sham, and I'm no longer willing to participate in it. I called them out on it. It's a theatrical production with people stashed in the audience to raise their point of views and to push their point of views. It was not a means to consult. It was just a means to showcase what the government wants to do. And I said, well, we're boycotting this as well. This is a sham. But I think we are past the point now. I don't think we'll ever get any sort of electoral reform from this government that's satisfactory. And even if we do get electoral reform from this government, I am confident that these guys will not follow the rules, not follow the new laws that they have that are on the books. They will find ways to work around it, and they will continue to rig the system to their advantage. So I am not too hung up on electoral reform at this point. I think what we need to do is to do the things we need to do to ensure that we win. And that means working around those guys' shenanigans, understanding the electorate at a very deep level, analyzing the electoral list, understanding ourselves who needs to be there and who not to be there. I don't care of them telling me. Analyzing what new voters are available and not registered and getting them registered. Doing what we need to do, understanding to have monitors at polling stations so that we can file claims against people we clearly identify do not belong there or haven't been done in 20 years. So I think we now have to take the fight to them. I think we have to own this thing. I think we have to stop asking Roosevelt Skerritt and his government for electoral reform. I think we need to pivot now to creating electoral reform ourselves. So not electoral reform, but to create a political advantage to nullify and to mute those guys' shenanigans, because I believe it will continue, electoral reform or not.
Thank you for that, Bernard. Thompson, let me just go to you because Bernard raised some issues there. I'm convinced that this regime in office will not make any effort to give the type of reforms that are going to level the playing field. It's not in their interest to do that, right? But there is something called people's power. And if the opposition forces can come together, and when I say opposition, I'm not only talking about the political parties, all the various groups. I frankly would like to see the Teachers Association and the Police Welfare Association and all these unions and all these church groups, all these civic society organizations. The efforts are being made now with the Electoral Reform Coalition. And I know the political parties are playing a major role there. It is clear that the United Workers' Party is the party at the moment that from basic past elections, well, its last trophy has shown that they have a certain amount of support. It seems to me the Freedom Party has been working, and I asked Bernard a while ago, what are they doing to meet their people and mobilizing and galvanizing? But it appears to me that the only way you're going to get the reforms that you want in this draft that is being prepared right now as we speak, and that should likely go to the Electoral Commission for review, the only way to get that is you have numbers of Dominicans banding together, all walks of life, all organizations coming together and say, listen, this is what we want. This is what we want, and we want it now. Thompson, I don't know what, I believe the Electoral Reform Coalition is making some efforts. We saw that Friday, and we expect a lot more coming. I expect that it will build momentum. But I think the impetus has to be driven by the political parties because they have the numbers, they have the organization on the ground, but they have a track record of mobilizing people. I need to get from you and from Bernard, but from you now, what exactly you anticipate could be done to ensure that that mobilization takes place so there is a force to be reckoned with by sheer numbers of Dominicans who are demanding electoral reform. I understand, of course, that will have to be driven by financial resources because you can't get this kind of mobilization without financial resources. So I imagine there's some efforts that have to be made to mobilize the financial resources. Give me some of your thoughts on how you see this thing playing going forward, Thompson.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Mr. G. Mobilization is key. That's it. That's the number one or the most important thing, to be able to mobilize people to act. But also, the other point that you raised, which is critically important, is that it should not simply be the purview of the political parties. People sometimes believe that, well, it's a political issue, it's just the political parties that should be concerned. But every single group within the country should be seeing themselves as that impacting them. Because as a police officer, if you get a bad government, you will not get promotion. You will work all of your life and remain a constable. After 30 years, you're still a constable because you have a really bad government in place. If you're a nurse, you might never get promoted. You might be forced to go overseas. So at the end of the day, every single Dominican is impacted. And we must see the whole fight for electoral reform as something that should be owned by all the people of Dominica. Even the supporters of the Dominican Labour Party should also be the ones advocating for electoral reform, because they want at the end of the day, when they are in opposition, they want to have an equal chance of getting back into office. Okay, and if the playing field is not level, then their chances becomes worse. So importantly for us is to understand that. So that is something that concerns all of us. And therefore, when the party calls upon, or when there are efforts to mobilize, to do a march, or to do a rally in the middle of Roseau, or to call people out, people should set aside their fear, people should set aside their concerns, and be able to step out boldly and see this as a part of their democratic right. Part of my right as a citizen of Dominica is to call upon the government to do what is right to ensure the survival of our democracy. Now, that will take a lot of doing, because typically when you have a protest action You're talking about having to pay buses, get water, and do different things. It involves a lot of resources. So persons who might not be able to come to the marches, or who might not be able to do the protesting on the street, they may be able to support financially, support a bus, or get their friends together and do what is important and necessary. But I can guarantee you that as a party, we'll continue to play our part to drive the message of electoral reform, and using all options open to us, including protest action, including marches, including whatever it takes that we need to do as a party, we will have to do, because at the end of the day, this is a fight for democracy in Dominica. This is a fight for good governance in Dominica. This is a fight for the development of our country. This is a fight for the young people, for our children, for future generations. So we should not take this lightly, and every effort must be made to get the good reform that we are asking for. And one of the ways of doing that is to show a united front, to show that we are committed as a people, and that we'll get support from across the board to do it. And do not just leave it on the backs of a few individuals. Importantly, every single Dominican needs to take part. They need to be a part of this process.
Yeah, well, it seems to me, Thompson, that this fight there is really about eliminating corruption. I mean, restoring democracy, because it clearly, our democracy has been eroded, very badly eroded. This is a fight about not just restoring the economy, but restoring the livelihoods of people. And many people, their lives are broken. I mean, they cannot make ends meet. And so it seems to me, and then people are so afraid, they're so scared of even talking and making and expressing their concerns. They fear they might be victimized, although they're already victimized and shackled. But people still have more fear. I'm not so sure when people are going to get out of this, but they need to get out of it, because their life is not getting better by not speaking out, by not standing up and being counted. But we saw on Friday evening, we saw this gentleman came down at the invitation of the Electoral Reform Coalition. Very good initiative. It worked out. You had a packed house. This man came down and his message was very inspiring. And I think he set the tone, and he told the Dominican people, you have to stand up. You have to stand up and demand and get what you want. And I don't know, Bernard, you're a member of the Electoral Reform Coalition. I'm not sure what the next move is, but it seems to me there has to be another move very soon, and the numbers have to look bigger than the numbers that were at the DPSU building. In other words, it seems to me there has to be a building of momentum in this, so that the powers can realize that the people genuinely want electoral reform, and not just any old electoral reform. From some of the things that we heard in those consultations, they want genuine reform that they have been asking for. And I remember Mr. Coffey and a number of other people who spoke on Friday. They outlined specifically what it is that they consistently have been asking for, all of the sectors have been asking for. What do you see is the next move, Bernard, to mobilize people to get these numbers out there? What is the Freedom Party doing and helping to do to get to that point?
Well, as you indicated, Mr. G, we can't let the momentum slip away, the head of steam that we're building up. We can't let it dissipate. So we're talking, we're planning. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow to talk about the next steps. I mean, it will be, we won't talk about it here publicly unless we have something settled, but definitely we understand the pattern. We understand what works in this sort of environment to get the people excited, to get the people involved, to bring the people out, and to keep the momentum going. But beyond those big grandstanding events, which we will continue to do, we are all convinced, we all know this, that what we have to do is hit the communities, right? We have to hit the communities one at a time, and that's part of what the Freedom Party is doing in conjunction with other groups and other organizations. But we have to go talk to the people and sit there and look them in the eye and say, I mean well. because people, you can say that, but unless people really see you and touch you and look in your eye and see that you mean it, trust is not something that's logical. Trust is something that's emotional. It's a connection. And so what we have to do is to talk to the people, meet with the people in where they are, in their villages, on the side of the road, at a CWO, at a whatever, on a bus, and have the conversations with the people to make them understand what's going on. But most importantly, honestly, to make them trust that the opposition people are people of integrity, competence, and are quite able to take over and to do something with Dominica. Because one of the issues for people, they may not like what Skerrit is saying. They may not like what's going on. In fact, not only United, they actually hate it. Many liberates do. I speak to them all the time. But they are not convinced that things that they have an option, that the team waiting to take over are ethical. They'll say, well, all you fellas just want to get all your hands on the money, boy. Or you want to get your hands on the passport money. Or you just want to do it. So we have to be able to convince people, because that is absolutely not true. I can say that without hesitation for myself, for Thompson, for anyone else that I'm aware of in our organizations. We're not in it for the money. Who gets into this crazy thing for the money? Unless you're really crooked like Skerrit. But the point is, we mean well. We mean to serve. And we have to convince and let the people know that that is true. And we have to talk to the people directly, one-on-one. We have to analyze the voters. We have to analyze the returns of the last few elections. Where are we strong? Where are we weak? Which sectors, which voting districts, which polling districts we should target to have these conversations. And so that, I think, is the real work to be done. But of course, we will continue and do plan to continue to put together various events, because you do need a certain amount of political theater to keep people united, to get that united group psychology, because we do need to be seen strong as a group. And so we need those large events to gin up and keep that energy high. It's absolutely necessary, but we do have to do the work on the ground, block by block, brick by brick, if it needs be, to talk to every Dominican we can, and to tell them that they're good people who mean well. Not only mean well, because trust is based on two things. It's based on your intentions, but it's also based on your capacity to deliver. I might like that you intend to do good brain surgery on me, but I would not necessarily trust you if I don't think you have the right training. And so trust, we have to build that trust based on competence and also based on intentions. So if I believe we have the good intentions and the good competence across the political spectrum on both sides, all the opposition voices, I think we have the two elements of trust, but we need to convey and make people understand that those elements of trust exist within the opposition forces.
Oh, let me just say this, Thompson. I'm thinking that Bernard spoke about political theater and so on. The fact of the matter is, you need to mobilize on the ground right now. I mean, the people are thirsty for something. They're suffering. And we know that the parties are doing some work. But Thompson, it is also important that all voices come together and sing from one hymn sheet. I'm hearing all kind of talk about new political parties being formed. That makes absolutely no sense. I mean, unless, of course, somebody's trying to just split the votes to try to help the Labour Party to win, that makes no sense whatsoever. That's inherent nonsense. And I think whoever's doing it should stop it. I understand there was supposed to have been a meeting in the Carib territory over the weekend. I'm not sure whether that came off. But certainly, I think it's a bad idea. They should abandon that, and they should join forces with what exists on the ground as a track record of performance. So, Thompson, I want to come back to you, because I would think that your party is working on the ground, because all politics is local. In order to mobilize and bring people, the masses of people, you have to gather the people from all of the constituencies, because people, as you know, are suffering in all of the constituencies. The farmers are suffering, the bus drivers are suffering, the contractors are suffering, everybody is suffering, right? The manufacturers are suffering. So let's talk about what it is that your party is doing, Thompson. Also, to help to attract all of the forces to work together under one umbrella, to get the message to this regime that is really time for change and the people want to change.
Yes, indeed. When I was elected political leader, Mr. G, I made it very clear to my party that we had to contend for the hearts, minds, and souls of the Dominican electorate. That our main and overriding focus must be to win hearts and minds. How do you win hearts and minds? By knocking on every door, visiting every home, talking to the people, by literally camping out on the ground and doing everything within our powers to convince people. Let it be about a conversation. Let it be about, because we have a situation in Dominica where we've seen how people vote and over what they vote and how they vote. And it's about talking to them and making them understand that at the end of the day, yeah, you may have received a handout. You may have received the promise of a scholarship. You may have received the promise of an NEP job. But ultimately, are you happy? Is your life better? Are you realizing your full potential? So it's about a conversation. So a key part of mobilization is having this conversation with people where they are, meeting them where they are. The other important point is to have this unity of purpose. The opposition absolutely have to be united. We cannot be about splitting the votes. We cannot be about pulling this way or pulling the other. And that's the reason why, while I cannot stop any party from being formed, because we are in a democracy, I cannot tell you not to form a party. What I can say is that whoever it is that is forming these new parties, whoever it is involved in those efforts, must consider the cost. Every action has some kind of consequence. And so if you're going to be in a situation where the formation of this party is going to further divide the opposition, then you have to stop it. Okay? Because we cannot win if we are divided. And any efforts to divide the opposition should be frowned upon, should really be discouraged. And so, yeah, whilst again, we cannot prevent the formation of parties, you cannot form because we are in a democracy. The persons that are involved should be conscious of the fact that what we really need, that the real enemy, the real focus should be on getting rid of this administration. That should be our focus. And the best way to accomplish this is to have a united front, a united opposition, working together, working collaboratively, and working to influence and basically confirm and encourage persons who support the Dominica Labour Party government to take a second look at the opposition. Look at what the opposition can bring to the table. Look at the people involved in the opposition movement and see what they have to offer. All right, let us provide a compelling reason why a person who voted for the Dominica Labour Party in the past can now say, yes, I'm satisfied. I can vote for you guys. Okay, but if they see a fractious, divided, bickering opposition, that makes the job a lot more difficult. So what we need is a unity of purpose. We need to be completely focused on making those changes. We need to continuously dialogue with other opposition forces and not exclude anyone. We should never think that as a party, we should be out there on our own. No, we are part of an opposition. Whilst it is true that we have the largest following politically within the country, we need the support of everyone within the opposition. We need the support of persons who are now supporting the Dominica Labour Party to come aboard. And we should not be afraid to say that. We should not be afraid to say that we need the support of Dominicans to make that change happen. And so we'll be going after everyone. We'll be going after every single person in Dominica with a message of change, with a message of a country that can be better, of a vision for a country that is born out of a genuine desire on our part, a love for country, a desire to see the betterment of our people. That is the message that we need to carry across. And any message that is contrary to that should be discouraged. And those seeking to move in different directions should really come together so that we can move forward in one accord, in one voice, and do what is necessary to bring that conviction to the people of Dominica, because we must bring change to this country. Our country is hurting. Our country is in a serious state of degradation. It is deteriorating by the moment. The bills are piling up. The debts are piling up. The level of corruption is on the increase. We need to do better as an opposition. And the way we do that is by being together collectively and having those conversations amongst ourselves and bringing a message of unity to those that we need to get the support from.
Yes, and our country, just before I introduce our brother Gabriel, who's joined us now, our country is just about 300 square miles, average 20 miles long by 15 miles wide. It has just between 60 and 70,000 people. I do not think this country needs 20 ministries, and that is part of the problem. Big government, lavish spending, all these big salary increases. The cost of government is too high. In the same way, the point I'm making is that you don't need 6 political parties to get this country going. You don't need it. It's absolutely unnecessary. Here is a comment that one person made here to me before I go to Brother Gabriel. The effects of poor governance are a failed state, poor economic growth, and increased corruption rate. The level of dysfunction across the board is a common indicator of bad governance. This can include an abuse of power with individuals in position who are not adequately qualified to carry out their duties and responsibilities. Such leaders have conflicts of interest, pursuing their own personal gain at the expense of its citizenry, as is evident now in Dominica. Another comment is, this is not the time for multi-political parties. First, get rid of this obstacle and focus on the issue at hand. And at this juncture, we are not looking for a political replacement. We want real change. That is what somebody said. Now, as I introduce Attorney Gabriel Christian, and I want to just quote a little quote from something that is, and I'm sure he will expound on that tonight. Gabriel said, we must now move to return to democratic governance in Dominica in 2024 and help shape the fate of our beloved homeland. Dominicans at home and abroad must act wisely, resolutely together to secure the democracy and the prosperity that we all desire. Gabriel Christian, let me go over to you now. A very pleasant good evening to you.
Well, blessed good evening to you, Brother G, and Brother Lambert, and my 2 brothers, by choice, Brother Thompson and Brother Ito. When I was a child, I grew up next to Brother Ito's family. I don't think he was born yet. His father was a very wise man. I remember when man landed on the moon, I think his father had a pair of binoculars, and we all went to their house to see if we could use the binoculars to look at the moon to see if we could see man on the moon. Of course, that was not successful. But his father birthed a very wise son who, legend has it, went on to do great things in mathematics and went on to Texas Instruments, where he was part of a company that made scientific calculators. If I'm wrong, I will be corrected on the record here this evening. I first saw Thompson Fontaine as a first-year sixth former. I was teaching at the grammar school. I was 18 years old, and I thought he was 10, but he was maybe a little older than that. And I said, how comes this guy is in sixth form? And they said he's very small, but he's very smart. I never forgot that. I was standing next to the staff room, and the knapsack on his back was bigger than him. It's full of books. And so I may have studied this with a degree of jocularity and affinity, but that's what we need in Dominica, which, Brother G, you reference as being just 29 miles long and at its widest, maybe no more than 16 feet in width, with about, used to be 85,000. I'm not sure now what the figure is. But small country though we are, we see before us 2 examples of 2 young men, relatively speaking, highly educated, who could just have turned their backs on Dominica, like so many people from so many developing countries, and gone on to somewhere else and done just well, just fine. But what they have done is really exhibited what I sought to reference in that article on the democracy we've lost. They have exhibited what I call civic duty. And it's that civic duty that I come to speak about this evening. You know, there's a picture I have somewhere in my album of a young Bernardito next to Eugenia Charles at Nolte Park, which is where the Dominican community used to meet in the Washington, D.C. area, right around the time that Thompson Fontaine came in to work with the IMF. I was not a member of the Freedom Party. I didn't hold any office. But we would meet there as community. And through this effort of doing things for community, I established a relationship that allowed me to interview Ms. Charles about her life, and that later evolved into her biography. Why is this important? More than the parties that have been formed in the dark by maybe Machiavellian hands to split the democratic opposition, is what I call a culture of democracy. You see, the British handed us Westminster. The British, mind you, have no constitution. Whether you like it or not, and putting slavery aside and racial prejudice aside and the bad old days aside, is they have a culture of democracy. Let me illustrate, my friends, before I wish you all a happy new year and for every best wish for good health and happiness and success of our democracy project. Let me just share 2 or 3 things. 2 or 3 years ago, during COVID, Boris Johnson was compelled to resign. He didn't sell passports to gangsters. He didn't put $6 billion or 6 billion pounds outside the British exchequer. He didn't give contracts to his friends to build an airport outside Heathrow or wherever else, or Gatwick is the other one, I think. No. He was forced to resign because he had held a party with more than 3 people. I think the COVID mandate was you couldn't associate or have any gatherings above a certain number. And merely on that basis, because of a culture of democracy, he was forced to step down. Recently, in Mr. Sunak's cabinet was a Home Secretary who made a criticism of the Metropolitan Police during the Gaza protest, the protest to stop the genocide in Gaza. And she made a comment, and people thought she was very offensive towards the police. And she too, in a government which has a parliamentary majority, was forced to resign. Why am I mentioning those things? Well, that's the root from which we came, you see. So we have the trappings of a parliament where the government business is supposed to be done. It doesn't work. We have the trappings of a judiciary which is supposed to be independent. It's shambolic, and you heard the criticism of the Chief Justice recently. It doesn't work. We have the trappings of a director of public prosecution, which is supposed to be an independent office, but which bends to the will of the governing party, and which at this point in time is persecuting Dominicans who speak out, and Dr. Fontaine is one of those who is so persecuted. Doesn't work. We have a police service that is supposed to be an independent professional police service, doing the people's business without fear or favor. It doesn't work. We have an executive branch that is dominated by the party that won the election and which also dominates the parliament. So the parliament is dominated by the party elected. That's the legislative branch. And the executive branch is also dominated by the same party. And that same executive branch, therefore, rather appoints DPP and all the rest of it. And so what we have is, although it's Westminster, it is metastasized into a cancerous tyranny, a dictatorship of one man, where we know that people have been paid gratuity to run for office, and we know that cheating and bribery is rampant. And we see a country where our people have now descended to that dark place, that abyss, where they speak in whispers. Oh, Sheridan, that's what this fella's doing, you know. But don't tell anybody I told you, you know. Ito, boy, this fella's boy. Thompson, and on and on. And so we have to understand that you can have the best laws. You can have the best constitution. But we have to talk about a new republic because the first republic has failed. It's no good talking about just electoral reform. We want that so we can make the change, but we have to let our people know we're going to put in checks and balances where we can strengthen the independence of our judiciary, where we can strengthen the independence of our executive branch as separate from our legislative branch. So we're going to have to rethink elections. The position of DPP ought to be an elected position, as with the financial secretary or the minister of finance, as with the attorney general, so that we can insulate them from one-man rule at a time when that one man is drawing down $64,000 of rent per month on his mansion. I'm reliably informed that the main hospital is short of drugs. I'm reliably informed that certain basic bills are not being paid. And our people are sitting in Dominica, I dare say the majority, and accepting what is a crime, which is the placement outside the consolidated fund of our country of at least $6 to $8 billion, where the most significant contract in the history of our independent nation has been given to a friend of the prime minister, who, by the way, I'm reliably informed, built the home that he's renting supposedly at $64,000 a month. So we have to see a change in the culture. And as a young person, I would go to the St. George's Hall, and there'd be meetings of the Caruso Cooperative Credit Union. You see, the credit union was started by a progressive nun from the Catholic workers' movement called Sister Alice de Tremery, along with a guy called Mr. Elwing. And they'd say that members of the general public are advised that there's a meeting of the Roseau Cooperative Credit Union this evening at the St. George's Hall. The business of the credit union will be discussed, and refreshments will be served. Now, being 6 and 7 years old, I was more interested not in balance sheets and profit and loss. I was more interested in the refreshments. But what they did was they created a culture where people would come and you'd sit there and you'd listen to people talk about the business of the credit union. So in Dominica today, I ask, where are the parent teachers associations, the PTAs? Do they exist? Where's the social league that we knew? Does it exist? Where are the trade unions that we knew, from which the so-called Labour Party, and I think it's a misnomer to keep calling what is a group, an oligarchy, Labour Party. It has nothing to do with Labour Party. There's nothing to do with social democracy and trade unionism. Where are the trade unions? Were they there at the PSU when Mr. Anil Roberts was there? Were they there? Where was the National Youth Council that I belonged to at one point? Was it there at the Public Service Union when Brother Ito gave an eloquent presentation, I was told, and I'm not sure that Thompson was there. What about the student councils that we knew? The Thompson Fontaine you see on there was the treasurer of the National Union of Students in 1980. I have the notes, Thompson. Thank God for record keeping. Thank God for record keeping. And so when you have
as my president.
Okay. And Zed Lloyd, yes, who's still, so you guys are still in the wicket, and thank God for civic duty. So when we have a society, my friends, dearly beloved, where the civil society organizations that we knew, the Businessmen's Organization, Employers Federation, the DAIC, the PTAs, the social leagues, the credit union league, the youth organizations, the student councils, are absent. You've created the enabling environment for tyranny to rule. Because those are the organizations that, banded together, allows for democracy to thrive. Absent, they are replaced by gangsters, Navy SEALs, snipers, dope dealers, money launderers, ambassadors of shame and banditti, a lot of people talking loudly with a lot of profanity, drinking hard liquor in the street, and jumping up and down, singing nasty music. That's the society, my friends, that we have. And Brother Ito, as I conclude, said to me one time, and I'll never forget where I was. I was in the parking lot going to get a meal, coming from court, and we're trying to get something going with the academy, because both Dr. Fontaine and Brother Ito, who I think also is a PhD, if I'm not mistaken, were part of the Dominica Academy, where as a small island, we produce such vital human resource that's scattered all over the world, and we start to get it together in an Academy of Arts and Sciences. Singapore has no rivers, my friends, but Singapore is making billions in chemistry, billions by the use of physics, billions in the way of industry. An island that has a little island state has no water of its own. But they've been able to gather the human resource in unified effort. So Ito said to me in that conversation, Bernard, I'm not sure you remember it. He says, Gabe, as individuals, Dominicans are brilliant, but as a collective, we are mediocre. It's a very profound statement. Thank you for having made it, because it's true. And so we want to move from mediocrity to excellence. Can we do it? I have faith that we can. And so let's begin to change the culture. Because if we change the government and remain in the same culture, in the same mindset, away from asking our leaders to pursue the path of integrity and excellence, and where we too understand that we too must be seized. You see, because the leaders cannot rise higher than the society allows them to. You see, you hear the saying, people get the leaders they deserve. So let us be deserving of good leadership, and let us show ourselves worthy by volunteering our time to teach, to engage in studied effort, and as the brothers are saying, to unite. And I want to commend you. I want to commend you, Brother G, Brother Lambert. I want to commend all those who've been patriotic, all those who've not given up the struggle, all those who've not given in to blandishments and money under the table, like those now who may be forming a third, fourth, fifth party just to create more confusion. I want to compliment all of you for pursuing the path of excellence and a collective effort rooted in a democratic spirit of civic duty, honesty, unselfish effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gable. Now, before I come back to what we want to do now, moving forward, let me just take a little bit of thing from what Gabriel said. Because Gable, I too agree that beyond just changing the government, we need to do a little bit more than that, because the framers of our constitution never anticipated that you could have rogues and vagabonds controlling the power of any nation, right? I would prepare to go this far and say, in order for you to get the power back into the hands of the people, I don't care whether it's Thompson Fountain or Bernardito or Gabriel Christian that is prime minister. I think in our constitution, the prime minister has too much power. He has more power than the president of the United States. As you said, the attorney general is not elected, the DPP is not elected, none of these people are elected, the police officers. So here's what I would think. In order to put the power back in the hands of the people, you need to empower the local government. You see all these village councils that we're electing, you need to make real local government. They should be the ones in a Senate, which is the legislative branch. I do not believe that the executive branch should also be the legislative branch. Like you said, Gabo, it is not making sense. How can you be in charge of the cabinet? You have 21 people in there. You have those 21 people plus other people in the parliament. So you take a cabinet decision and it becomes law because the eyes always have it. That makes no sense. Where the people's contribution? But yet you have local government, you're electing people in all these villages, and they have no say in what's going on at the level of the legislature. Where is the people's voice in there? And that is part of the problem that we have. So we need to take a look again at that structure and say, you know something, maybe we should really have a real Senate. That could be the legislative branch. And these people could form a part of that. So they're elected by the people, represent the people at the constituency level, at the village and community level, and they go in there and they're part of the making of the laws. So it's not left to the prime minister or they want to say, okay, I control all the cabinet, therefore what I say goes. If you really want power back in the hands of the people, we have to look at restructuring our government. And so I just wanted to throw that in to say I think it's important, but that is for later. Right now, I think we're concerned about removing the big stone in the road that is causing the problem. I mean, everybody knows the litany of things that bad governance causes, and we are seeing it, they're playing right in front of our eyes. Everybody's talking about it. The point is, Dominicans need to make a resolve, and nothing against the Labour Party or anybody in the Labour Party. I believe in democracy. You cannot have a government there for 23 years. You have to change your government from time to time. This government has been here too long. They've lost their way. They're making errors. You notice what has been happening. The leader of the Labour Party regime has been saying to Dominica, my group have not been performing, and every time I go to election, I change them and I put new people, and they're not performing, and I change again. But the only thing that's not changing is the leader himself. Is that really, isn't that the problem? The common thing that is there all the time is that leader. But the leader does not only change himself, he's changing everybody else around him and saying, they're the problems, not me. Let me keep changing them. Let me put square pegs in round holes so I control everything. But then he blames them. How do you put an engineer to be health minister and tell me you don't expect to have problems in your healthcare system? How do you take your doctor and make them finance minister and tell me you don't expect to have problems in your treasury? Why do you want to take square pegs and put them in round holes? That is a recipe for failure, for non-performance, because this is not in the people's comfort zone. To me, that is a deliberate and calculated attempt to make sure you divide and rule. So these people are incompetent. Everything has to come to me. I mean, come on, that makes no sense. And Dominicans can see that. They're just afraid to say it. But we should do something about it. Thompson, I want to go back to you because it seems to me that something needs to be done about this. And I'm hearing people talking about forming political parties. I mean, this is not going to solve any problem, form a new political party. That's a nonsense, a non-starter. Forget about it. Everybody put their heads together. As I said, I think the Electoral Reform Coalition is making an effort there. I think everybody should join in that. And something should emerge there, which is a force to be reckoned with that can make some real change in the country and take it off the path of destruction that is it. The thing is on a edge, on a cliff, falling down. You need to rescue the economy, Thompson. You are used to doing that for some countries. Tell us something more about this, because we really need somebody like you to tell us something about this now.
Importantly, and Gabe, good evening to you as well. You know, it's great to have you, with us. Always a man of wisdom and always great listening to you. Mr. G, the important thing, I think what we need to keep stressing, and the ideas that both you and Gabe discussed in terms of the future for the country. These are the kinds of discussions really that should be taking place within the country as a mature democracy after 40 odd years of independence. But we are stuck, unfortunately, with discussing the issues of bad governance and corruption and missing billions and government stealing of elections. All of those things that can only keep us back and not allow us to move forward as a people. And we really need to break free of that. We absolutely have to break free of that. And so, the task of building this country.
Thompson, can I interrupt you 1 second? Lamb, you want to take a call?
Yes, there's a call on the line. Please go ahead. Good evening.
Good evening to you, Lambi. Happy New Year to you guys, and good evening to your panel on the discussion tonight. I just want to say pleasant evening. Good evening. Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year to you too.
But, gentlemen, I had the opportunity of being home this past few weeks. And I can tell you from the conversations I have had with people on the ground, there is something happening on the ground, and I think wise men will capitalize on that. Let me give you a perfect example of the situation we've had. And I spoke about the police, the situation of the police force. And as much as Blackmore said, our police commissioner was a national hero, there is evidence, and based on what happened, that there is a serious systematic problem in the police force. And I just want these guys to understand, because I know some of them listening. And as I said, some of them are my very good friends. We sat in school together. I have nothing personal against them. But what I have an issue with is people who take an oath to serve the people should be honest and be honorable. And that's why there is honorable in the and the beginning of the people who serve in the ministry. And I found out, in one of the districts in the police district, where one community has about 3,000 people, there are only 5 police officers, and they have been without vehicles for over 8 months. That entire district that stretches from a significant portion of Dominica has 22 police officers. And my understanding is one man and his family has several trucks, several cars, and even his kids have police officers sitting outside. What that tells you is the service to country doesn't exist. And if 4 individuals have more police per capita than an entire district in Dominica, we have a problem. And I get to realize that Dominicans are not bad people. So why do we have so much security surrounding the Prime Minister? I'll give you a perfect example. One individual said to me, if Dominica had a military, and I'm saying it because we want to expose the systematic problem, and we as citizens have to call out the BS when we see it. If Dominica had a military, they could get to the headquarters. And I saw it for myself. While I'm passing in front of the headquarters, there are 2 women police officers, one a corporal and one a constable, is talking about a white bus that is packed under that wall that's over 100 years old, going up to the old CSC. And she says, man, if that wall falls along, the bus is going to mash up. And an elderly lady is walking into police headquarters, and she's asking the police officers, ma'am, can I go in? There's nobody at the gates. Nobody. That's the level of safety we have in Dominica, that the police officers themselves are so confident that they can run an entire district with just 20-something police officers, no vehicle, and nobody's manning it. My friends, Dominica is a peaceful country, and I think there are individuals who want to give us evidence to the contrary. And I'm going to propose something for the solution, because too many times we talk about the problems. And here's what I'm going to propose. The talk that is going on around is we need to unite. And here's how I think we should do. We are in an unusual circumstance. I think if the political leaders want to show leadership, we should put all this party business aside. I think we should immediately form a coalition for the restoration of democracy, law and order in Dominica. All the guys who are leaders in whichever political party, show me the leadership that you're really serious about Dominica, not just yourself. I think Bernard Ito has a part to play. I think Johnson Boston has a part to play. I think the UWP leader has a part to play. I think the EO Laborites and the Laborites who are fed up have a part to play. And let's make the constitution of that coalition government the constitution of Dominica. Let's make the symbol, the Cicero, or some emblem of Dominica, if that's legal by anyways. We have enough lawyers in Dominica to determine that. And the next time we go up for election, let it be a vote for Dominica against a red flag that has been captured by a country that has no respect for democracy, and I don't need to name names. When that party wins office, and if they win and Dominicans really want change, when that party wins, the Constitution of Dominica has already established that if there is no opposition, an opposition shall be created from the elected members of the House. If you want to show leadership, you want to show unity, you can vote among yourselves. That displays democracy. And we can say whoever wins becomes the prime minister. You get a term, you select an opposition leader. That way, the argument and the discussion in the House of Assembly will be about issues and the way forward. And every individual has the ability to vote their conscience. That way, you are representing Dominica. The reason why I'm recommending this is because we talk about unity, but I still hear in the public domain, UWP, Freedom, APP, New Party, whatever the case may be. All I'm hearing is fragmentation and disunity. And if people want to show leadership, like I said, I was in the ground in Dominica. There's so much more I could tell you guys. But I think the people of some of the constituencies, which are diehard Labour, are begging. And that way, if you can create a united front, you can now join your resources and go down to the constituencies, put the best person to serve that country, and have them vote for the Constitution, the flag, and the democracy in Dominica. Gentlemen, if we cannot get to that point, I think the Labour Party is going to be sitting down there laughing, because as far as I heard the conversation today, the conversation was Thompson Fontaine, whether he should be in Dominica or not. While we're having this conversation on the air, Dominica cannot pay for the passports in Canada. Dominica cannot pay for medical supplies in the hospital. Dominica cannot pay its tuition to students. Dominica, the Prime Minister has passed a law to dip into credit union. Nobody makes a fuss. But in the meantime, we're taking $100 million loan from a foreign company without letting us know how we're going to pay it. And at this point, one man is controlling the finances of the state. I think it's time for revolutionary ideas. I think it's time for revolutionary spirit. And if the courts, if the system that is put in place that is intended for democracy is not working, then the only other option we have is chaos. And to my friends who are listening and taking notes, I have your best interest. And as I said to one of my friends, if you are put in a position as a police officer or a government official, and you are supposed to maintain integrity and discipline, you cannot violate the laws and expect your subordinates to obey your rules. If you are put in that position, the country is bigger than every one of us. And if we cannot get to that point, my friends, I think we're fighting a useless battle. Gentlemen, I'm listening offline. You guys have a great evening. And as always, I will be contributing whenever I get a chance. Thank you.
And thanks a lot for your contribution. It's always good to get good ideas, new ideas to consider. Thompson, if Lambie, anytime you have a call, you can just interrupt. We'll take the call. But Thompson, you were continuing, and I don't think Lambie, you want to take a call? Let's take another call.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead.
Gentlemen, good night to you all.
Good night.
All right.
Okay. I mean, I listened to the caller before, and brilliant ideas. Just like previously, last year we had Lennox and many others with brilliant ideas when it comes for rule of law. Just like you on the panel there, you all have good ideas. But and it's 20 years, and we have been going like back and forth with the same ideas, bringing up different, trying to bring solutions for the cause of purpose. But we have to understand, and I will, if I even go further, let me just say one thing. I'll use Charles Taylor as an example. People might not like certain things about him, but when he was in the union and he speak, people would listen because he could get people to have the idea of let's get things done. Even Crazy T, Mr. Timothy, the psychology that the Skerrit and his team used since 10, 15 years ago was to blind and to make a population feel weak. To go for what they want. You see, that is what happening and plaguing in our society right now. You understand? Now, unless we don't have that approach that we listen, we're going to take it. We cannot go year after year after year coming down and trying to follow the rules of law when the people we are trying to make that should make Dominica a better place, are making Dominica a better place for themselves and not for a nation. You see? That is what we have to understand right now. I mean, you all are brilliant fellas, well-educated guys. You all doing what you all have to do. And most of us are doing it because of love of country. But the generation back home, they are so blind to success. You see, that I listening to Dr. Thompson trying to reach out. I listen to Lennox reach out. I listen to Q95 as a program that stands for democracy, stands for the voice of the people. That's how I consider Q95, the voice of the people, because it's open to any political and anybody. But yet the people on the ground back home are lazy and are hopeless to success, and they don't want to succeed. I'm saying to myself, if I'm leaving home, and a man that could not even afford a bicycle right now have so much, I want some too. I want. But all people don't want that. They would rather run behind a truck and hold on the side to get a ham, to get a turkey. So how are we going to approach it? How are we going to take it? Because the education that is given, that is education of law, trying to follow the right direction by getting ourselves to be an opposition, but following the rule of law. But that is not opposition. That are the leaders that are supposed to set an example and be a role model for country and for the youth to adapt to. I'm not showcasing that. I mean, I have nothing against it, but I would be happy to stay here and call your radio station and say, listen, man, the government is doing a good job. But no, because I remember me as a businessman, I saw when it was declining. I remember that same forum, Q95. I tried organizing a small business organization to see if we could come together to fight it while I was back home. I was on Q95 trying my best. But we have a generation, again, I'll repeat, that just don't want to see success. Like they settle for less. So I don't know, gentlemen, we have to have a go for it attitude. I hear a few callers calling the programs like Matt and other things and saying we have to take it. We have to take it as a people. That's why he carried silence. Charles Savre, because if Charles Savre speak, when his utterances come out, he could, if Charles Savre was in opposition, and Mr. Fountain, don't take it wrong because you were a disciplined guy with a disciplined approach. But Charles Savre, and I heard Christian talking about it, the people of the 70s, the 60s, 70s, and 80s had a different approach. And these people are weak. They are no longer the strong ones. And the generation that was, because Labour Party is there for 23 years. The man that was 20 years is 43 years. That man is true, he have a little voice, and that's the generation that talking like us or like me. But the others that was below that is 20, 22, 23, all they know is nasty business. All they know is going and waiting for something because they're settling for it. So our approach is, number one, have to be able to let's go get it. Another thing too, we have to try to motivate the younger ones. You know, like I saw Thompson had a thing on Facebook talking about the health issue. We need more of that, talking about how are we going to achieve, how are we going to make the young ones feel that they are welcome, pull them in, tell them, show them avenues that they can create employment for themselves, show them how they're going to climb. We need to be more talk about this so we can see if we can get a generation out of that curse of being blind to success. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you, and I hope you all get the point I'm trying to bring across. May God bless you all and everything, and God bless Dominica. Thank you.
God bless you too. Certainly got the point you're trying to make. Your ideas and suggestions are always very, very welcome. Lambi, you'll just interrupt us when you have to. Thompson, I believe this gentleman was speaking about something I heard one learned attorney refer to as the Constitutional Cool Wash Brigade. That is what I think he was talking about in the 1970s when he spoke about Charles Savre, he spoke about Louis Benoit, he spoke about Alec Gage, and he talked about Otis Augustus and all the other people. This gentleman said, listen, we are the Constitutional Cool Wash Brigade. All right? Mr. Savre became the president of Dominica. But I don't think that I heard you say anything, Thompson, tonight that is saying you're against everybody getting together under one umbrella. I think you've been saying.
Absolutely not. And you know, and it's important to note as well that, as the gentleman indicated, that all of these persons came from the trade union movement. We had very strong unions who, when they took action, could really do something. They shut the country down. So when WAU shut down, they shut down the ports, no boats coming in. When the CSA went on strike action, the teachers stayed home, the nurses stayed home, you know. So you had stuff happening. We're in a different era. But the point that he made concerning the young people is one of which I want to pick up on, because I have a deep concern for the young people of Dominica and the direction that they're headed. It is such a different era. When we grew up and in Dominica, in our teen years, I believe that there was so much hope in the country and what Dominica could offer. It's almost like we believed that we could be anything in Dominica. There was always that dream in our heads that we could become anything in this world. We could go anywhere and do well. I get the impression now that the dream is not the same in Dominica. The young people are really fighting a very difficult battle and sometimes losing battle because the country has not given them that space that we had, for example. And so it's a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle to earn a living. It's a constant struggle to make ends meet. I was talking to a gentleman this morning, you know, from Point Michel. He's talking about a young guy who's been at home for all of those, you know, he's been out of school for 2 years, and in 2 years he's not been able to find anything to do, and his frustration levels are just building up, and that is multiplied over. In my walks on the ground and talking to people, I met several young men who are literally out of their minds. These are young men. In 2 cases, these were young men in my constituency who had gone to state college, but because of the frustrations, they were just like zombies in the village now. They've lost their mind. They're completely out of it. You know, we have failed our young people in a way that is really, really shocking. And the question is, how do you motivate these young people? That's what the caller was asking. How do you offer some hope for these young people? And that is what we need to offer. You know, that is what we need to really impress upon the young people, that things can be different. It was not always that way. We are in this situation because we got a government that was completely uncaring, a government that was simply concerned about themselves, about their pockets. It was about building the first mansion, building the second mansion, building the third mansion. It was about making the first million, making the second million, and so on. It was never about the people. It was never about the young people of this country. And so, you know, we have to really have this conversation with the young people, that we care deeply about them, that whatever we do, when we assume the roles of in office, it will be to develop the young people of this country. It will be to offer them hope. It will be to make them dream again, like we once dreamed. You know, we once dreamed because around us was success, around us was people were working, people were motivated, our parents were out there in the field, they were dragging us along, have me pill coffee on a Saturday, which I hated. But later when I went on to pill my own, in fact, I have about 10 pounds of coffee right now that I peeled a couple of years ago. And before the hurricane, you know, I went to do it voluntarily, but at the time I would hate to do it, you know, but that's the kind of environment that we were in, where you were pulled along by your parents, you were encouraged to work hard and so on. All of that is gone. And that's the conversation that we need to have as a country. The complete failure on our part of the young people of this country, and how do we fix that? How do we change that? How do we get young people once more focused, once more concentrating on doing well, and not just being frustrated and giving up and eventually becoming victims? Because that's what I think for the most part the young people are victims, because we as grown-ups, we have failed them.
Thompson, I'm going to put the question to Bernard, because you see, and I'll come back to you shortly, Gable. The thing is that the era this gentleman is talking about, the psyche was different, as you said, Thompson, because people were what? Independent. People were thinking independently. The farmers were independent. You see, the public servants felt independent. The pot workers felt independent. It was an era of independent thinking. Now, here's what happened over the last 20 years. You have somebody handpicking people who have never managed anything in their life. They're young, some of them have some qualification, good academic, but they've never managed anything. How can you take an engineer who has not managed anything in his life to manage the health sector of a country? How do you do that and expect to get a positive result? How do you take a medical doctor and tell him you must be the finance minister and expect to get a great result? How do you do that? I mean, and that goes all across the board, because what happens is that it is not the community that has been picking those people. So those people don't feel that they have to report to the community. They don't feel them, beholden to the community. They're picked by somebody else. And so they feel that they have to be loyal to that person, not to the communities, not to the sector that they are picked to manage. So if you put me there as the minister responsible for health, but really I owe my tenure to you, I don't have to worry about the health sector, because I'm not a health person anyway. I'm just an engineer. So Bernard, you see the problem, the dilemma that we have. How do we solve that problem? I think this is what we have to do. And a lot of people are coming with ideas. Something has to be done now to get rid of that problem. Then you can start anew, as Gabriel is saying. Your thoughts, Bernard?
Yeah, I'm very, very important. I think we're all saying the thing. And some of the callers have said, well, the young people don't want to work anymore. The young people, it's a different thing. They don't want it. They have no stick to itness. They're just not right. And somehow we seem to put the blame upon the new generations, the generation in Dominica now. But what we have to understand is that a large part, maybe the majority of our brains, our consciousness, our beliefs, our values, our aspirations are shaped is a social mind. You know, we are Dominicans and we think as Dominicans and we approach life as Dominicans. We even have an accent as Dominicans because that is the environment that birthed us, that created the social mind from birth, the ideas, the concepts, the idea set with which we view reality, which we understand reality, the values that we have to decide what's important, what's not important, what's more valuable, what's less valuable. All of those are social constructs. I'm saying this to say that when you have a certain social milieu, like we have had over the 23 years, you have created a social ecosystem and a petri dish that is creating a specific kind of human being. It's not simply happenstance that now the young people seem to have less of this drive, less of this vigor, less of this ambition, less ability to dream. It is not an accident. It is something magical didn't happen. A magical wand wasn't waved over Dominic and all of a sudden the young people are just lackluster. No, this was a result. The young people, in my mind, are a casualty of the social system that have been in Dominica over the past 23 years. The political and culture, the social culture, the idea. I mean, I hear very young children as young as 4 or 5. If in a conversation, they'll say, "We're going to scare it." Somehow, at 4 or 5 years old, they have a consciousness that in order for anything to happen in life, it has to come from the God spirit. And that at an unconscious level is affecting so many young people. They think they need permission. They think they are not free. They will be punished. Psychologically, they are on edge all the time. Boy, I could be victimized at any moment. If I speak, if I open my mouth, I can be victimized. But that didn't happen overnight. That took 23 years to create an intimidating social environment where young people cannot speak, and a depressing economic environment where young people cannot dream, and a devastating social environment where all their values that should be passed on from parents and from their peers and from our education system and from others in the community is no longer there. The social support, the social structures are no longer there. That leads to a devastation of our social capital. Because what has happened is a devastation of our social capital: trust, community togetherness, solidarity, belief in each other, belief in the ability to accomplish things, belief in to work hard. That's a real asset. As much as a financial asset of money is an asset, social capital is a real asset. And I would say it is a more important asset than financial asset, because once you have good social capital, togetherness, trust, willingness, ambition, you can create financial asset. That is the soil which gives rise to good financial outcomes, economic outcomes. And so Skerrit has not only ruined financially the country, he has ruined the very substructure of the country, which is the ability to dream, the ability to believe, the ability to be honest, the ability to believe you can accomplish without someone pulling the string for you, the ability to believe that you yourself don't have to run a scam. Scamism seems to be rampant in the country because that is what is mirrored from the top, and young people are vulnerable. That is what they see as the power brokers. That's the attitude, that's the values they themselves absorb most times subconsciously. The studies will show you. So we really have a problem there. And as you said, Mr. G, what we have to do, and why did I enter the political arena? I didn't have ambitions necessarily to enter the political arena. My ambition is to help develop a knowledge economy in the island. That's my expertise. That's my area of belief. I believe that is what we need to liberate our people. We need to raise our eyes above the fields and say we can be much more than that. Why aspire to be as good as St. Lucia? We need to say we want to be Singapore. We want to be Switzerland. We have smart, capable people. We can enter the knowledge industries and we can do something fantastic. That was my ambition. That's still my ambition. But once I got into Dominica to work on that idea, one quickly realizes that you cannot bring good nutrition to the patient without getting rid of the cancer. You can't bring exercise to the patient, or you can't bring better health habits and more nutritious food and alternative foods without getting rid of the cancer. And that's what one quickly realizes. And so the effort has to be remove this cancerous government, which is destroying our social fabric. This is no longer about politics. This is about rescuing the soul of Dominica, the essence. This is about rescue and renovation. It's a dramatic effort needed. And as we said, we have to come up with new dramatic ideas to fix it. But first, we have to get together to get rid of this government. And it's easy to say we should cooperate. I think we all believe there should be cooperation between the parties. The difficulty, and even within the difficulty is, let's face it, we have a lot of dysfunctions in the values that we hold, in the way that we approach each other, in the social solidarity that we show. That shows up within parties, intra-parties, inter-parties, within organizations, and Dominica suffers from rampant splinterism because we simply have to understand we need a certain mature approach to leadership, we need a certain mature approach to organizational work, and we need to overcome, and we have to do the emotional work, man. It's emotional burden, but we have to do the emotional work to subdue our egos, to reach out to other people, to work across party lines, and to do the hard work, psychological work to bridge these dysfunctions. Because if we don't realize that, and we don't do that, and don't set the expectations right for collaboration and all those things, it will fall apart. With a minimal effort, without that emotional burden to overcome the dysfunction of distrust and separation and not valuing people who look like you, unless we overcome those things and put in the emotional work, we will still fall apart. But if we do, we'll be an unstoppable force, a force like Dominica has never seen, because we have never been able to get it together like that. But maybe one good thing that will come out of this disaster for government, this immense pressure, is like graphite is converted into diamond through pressure. Maybe that pressure finally breaks through the psychological dysfunctions we have as a society and forces us to gel and forces us to take this country to another level, because once we build that kind of social capital, it's for generations.
Well, yes, some people say pressure does burst pipe. But here's the thing, I like Thompson's approach to focusing on the youth. But Gabo, and it's important because the youth are the future. They're the people that are there now. But you know, Gabo, this question of removing that cancer that is stultifying the independent thinking of the young people, that is preventing them from self-actualizing because they think there is something else. When somebody say, well, if not passports, then what? Or agriculture has been industry. He's telling you don't even think anything else beyond that. Just here's what it is, a little handout here and there. So Gabo, it seems to me that it's a good point that if you have a cancer, you have to remove it before you can move further. And then you can, once you take that cancer out, you can start fixing the youth and doing things for them, helping them to help themselves.
Indeed. Let me say, I'm really thankful to all the callers. The two people who called made brilliant points. The one who talked about the police station or the police district having 5 officers and the prime minister having a company of guardians or guards. I mean, that's sickening. True. What is he afraid of? Well, you know, you look at these associations and maybe that gives a clue. But let me just say that I endorse what they have said, which both of them spoke to unity. And I think Thompson and Brother Ito, if I can give any advice, not that my advice is worth much, but, you know, we have to get away from the labels. I mean, I see you both as patriots. I don't see Thompson as UWP or Ito as a Freedom Party. I see them as Dominican civic leaders who have sacrificed much to serve our country. I want to take a moment to say that for those persons who criticize reflective effort and studied effort, they don't understand that civilization has been built upon study. Some time ago, the best museum I've ever been to was the Museum of Chemistry in Philadelphia. And he talked about the old alchemists and the old castles in Europe, writing down everything they did so that when they passed away, those coming behind them had a record from which they could work. And for those who've done chemistry, you know, the periodic tables is the foundational basis for modern chemistry. If you didn't have FeIN or H2O water or O2 oxygen, where would you be? And for those persons who disparage intellectual curiosity and intellectual inquiry and writing and the studied approach, they are playing into the hands of our oppressor. And that's why our oppressor has not placed any emphasis on reading. 23 years. Not one book on Phyllis Chandolfrey. Not one book on Iole Blanc. Where those books have been written, they've been written by us and others who, like us, believe that education is important. I listened to Brother Ito, and he was brilliant in his exposition. I wrote an essay right around Christmas time because so many people say Dominicans are bewitched. They have Lumiere. It's demonology. Well, who am I to say? But I remember when I was in fifth form, we learned about Ivan Pavlov, the Russian behavioral scientist who worked on this, reward, and you'd ring a bell and give the dog some treat, and the dog would salivate, and then you would ring the bell and give no treat, but the dog would still salivate because it had been conditioned, you see. And so what I termed it was abused nation syndrome. Dominica is suffering. It's like, I remember when I was a little child in Port Authority, there's a woman, I won't call her name, she's maybe still alive. Her boyfriend would beat her in the street. And you make a mistake, Brother Lambie. You make a mistake, Brother G. You, Ito or Thompson, make a mistake and put a hand. She turn on you. And she say, look, if you don't beat me, you don't love me. That is where Dominicans are. We have been conditioned to behave in a certain way. And then, at the next election, he will, as you say, Brother G, he will discard. He say, look, it's not me. Those guys are the ones not doing their work. I'll fire them, and I'm the real deal. And he'll give you a little house and so on, a little, ham and a little turkey and so on, and then you come groveling. So Dominicans, I want you to understand the importance of intellectual curiosity and studied effort. Study Ivan Pavlov and behavioral conditioning. You said something very important. When I saw Thompson at 18, I'd been teaching only a few months. And I taught for about 2.5 to 3 years before I came up to the United States. But all that time I was at the grammar school, we kept cattle. And every morning at about 5:30, 6 o'clock, I'd go up to Stock Farm and take care of cattle. And after I came from grammar school and was with Zed Lloyd and Thompson at NUS, I had to go back up to Stock Farm and take care of the cattle. And in the morning, I left for the United States. The stock farm was still the government stock farm with Zebu cattle from India and Holstein cattle and different things. I had to go break Glory Cedar and get Zebua. And then we had chickens. And then we had some farm. And I carried cane. There was still cane at Yampis. And there was still cane at where the Deepwater Harbor is. I carried cords of cane. And so when you're in a society where labor is a facet of your everyday existence, and you understand that by the sweat of your brow you shall eat, it creates a different mental conditioning. And that's why the person who called or someone on the program talked about the people of the 60s and 70s and so on. Yes, we were shaped by the condition of a country that was up and coming and industrious and had factories. Like at El Rose, where I would go up sometimes to Ito's farm, where they had a farm at Elms Hall as a child with his family on a Saturday. We'd pass by the works at Bath Estate, where the Coopers were making barrels to store lime juice to ship to England, because limes at one point was our biggest industry. And today you can still buy lime juice by El Rose now. It's just that it's made in Mexico. You can go to a store now, right where I live, and you'll get El Rose, and it'll talk about the little history of Dominica, but it's no longer made in Dominica. So we have to understand that studied effort and understanding conditioning will have us know it's not demons, it's not a PI or some sort of, Lumiere. It's the conditioning that's been foisted on unwitting people. The high-priced artist, Burner to burn the money, and Morgan Heritage, and all the foolishness, and you jump up and so on. I mean, the beat, the jump up and so on, and then you get a little ham on the side and so on, and maybe a little more and so forth, and then you're caught in that web of deceit, you see. And you become foolish, you see. That is what has happened. Because abuse of a woman destroys her critical faculties, her dignity, her self-respect, you see. And that boyfriend then can continue beating her and having her think in his beating her, he really loves her, you see. So we have a beaten nation now. And our people are beaten down. And that's why when you looked at the people who were Anna Roberts, vibrant crowd, but I looked at the age range, you see. And I realized that the people who were most vital, who needed to have been there, as the young man who called and said, look, when someone who was born in 2000 looks around, no industry, no farms, no technical wing, no Camp Lawton Dairy, even the cadet corps that we tried to institutionalize, to revive, to breed some patriotic backbone into our youth has been basically sidelined, underfunded, misunderstood, not paid interest in. So it was the institutional framework of a dignified, upright, hardworking people that still pulses within the veins and the sinew of Mr. G and of Brother Lambie and Brother Ito and Brother Thompson. Those who called us this evening are still operating off of that template because they were conditioned to be dignified and civic-minded, you see. And so I want to applaud every effort to appeal to our young, because someone once said to me, young people are the ones who make revolutions.
Thank you for that, Gable. I want to, the time is running out on us. It's time for us to start winding down, actually. But I wanted to sort of go to you, Bernard, as you wind down with your final comments. We started on the premise that, listen, something needs to be done. It needs to be done now. There's the urgency of now. The electoral reform needs to happen. It's not going to happen in the way you want it to happen unless the people decide to make it happen in the way they want it to happen, which is the appropriate way, best practices and so on. We know that the electoral reform is needed so you can have the level playing field, so you can have really free and fair elections and hopefully get good governance out of that. To solve all these problems that we've been talking about every day, people calling math, there are problems all over the place. I mean, look at what is happening here. Today, I read an article where somebody had another problem. It's somebody who opened an offshore company in Dominica and had a problem, and they had a Dominica passport and all of that. And, that company was registered in Dominica. Another problem again, just another one. I mean, it's becoming so commonplace now. We're becoming numb to those things now, but it's dangerous to a country because here it is now visa restrictions and EU, everybody down our back. So we need to focus, and I think some of the callers are saying that. What it is what we want to do now? Are we ready to do the work now? Do everybody get together? Everybody do the ground, get together under one umbrella and make the case with one voice. We want electoral reform now. And to make myself even clearer, I've been saying so for quite a while, for a few years now. In any democracy, you should never keep your government in there for so long. You see what is the result of it. This is the result of it. Okay? And then because the people know so well that they're not performing. Remember when GW was in office, they said, take them out. Not because they're not performing, but because they're corrupt. Performance didn't matter. Well, you can see now that performance matters because you've had 23 years of non-performance. Performance really matters. So it seems to me that a decision has to be taken, a resolve has to be made for people to put their heads together, as everybody's suggesting. And at this point now, I think you have to forget about the cosmetics. Somebody has to take some kind of initiative, and I'm prepared to volunteer if I have to be one or two people who say, okay, fellas, let's sit around at the table. Let us focus on how can everybody get together on an umbrella and move forward to rescue the country from what is happening. Put an end to what is happening now. Put a full stop there and say, listen, give us electoral reform. Somebody said, and this is what happened in the 70s, That is what happened in 79, in fact. When Zabuka decided the port not working, and Sovereign decided the hospital not working, the nurses not working, the teachers not working. Everybody decided we camping there. And then, what the farmers did? The farmers brought their food. Hillary Shillingford mentioned that on Friday evening. The farmers brought the food. People cooked the food right there. And they stayed there until they got what they wanted. It seems to me that the people have to resort to something like that again. It will not be done unless you have the same conditions that existed in 79. We all leaders said, listen, we have to get together and we under one umbrella. Zabuka said the pot is not working. Sabra said the teacher's not working, the this not working. The fact of the matter is, it is critical that everybody put their heads together. Bernard, so let me just hear your final words on that as we go ahead, because I think we have no option now but for people to put their heads together to get some action. Your mic is muted. You need to unmute.
Yes, I fully agree with you, Mr. G. That is the mission right now. I think it's clear to everybody that what we need is to put our collective heads together and to be creative in coming up with solutions. But the solutions will not be easy. It's just like a corporate acquisition. They are never easy. You never just buy this new corporation and incorporate it into your old company and you go, voila, everything works perfectly. There are cultural differences, there are differences in perspectives, there are differences in objectives, work culture, and so it's a difficult process. And I want us, and I've said that in other forums, to first understand that getting together is a difficult process. It is not a declaration. The declaration is easy. But to actually make it work takes a lot of effort, and that's what we have to focus on to make it work. We have no choice. But we have to be realistic about it. We have to be open about it. We have to set our expectations correctly, because when we get disappointed, when we get hurt, when we get abused, because it will happen in getting together, that we understand and expect those things, because that is the process of putting together various point of views, maybe some radically different points of views. That is the only process, by hashing it out, by storming and forming, to get to that. So we have to be realistic about that. We have to understand the emotions involved. I mean, I understand the UWP feels like it's the battered woman, right? Hey, boy, look at all the blows we take over the years for all you. And now we're talking about new party and this and that. These are understandable emotions, and they have to be talked about. And the leaders have to be acknowledged and given an opportunity to voice the emotional resonance of what those pronouncements mean to them emotionally. Same thing in my party, and so forth. So we have to, I think, be prepared to do the emotional work and to have the emotional maturity. But we need the people, everyone in Dominica, especially on the opposition side, to demand that kind of behavior from its leaders, to demand ethical, cooperative leaders who can build bridges, who can make those things work, to keep us accountable to those standards. And to those of us or those parties who want to splinter things, segregate things, break things up, mash up things for egocentric purposes, those members need to punish such leaders and understand that they should not be the ones in the ascendancy, or should not be the ones coordinating things. And so it takes a village to make this thing work. It takes an ability to support those who have those attributes. It takes a certain maturity, and we have to work on ourselves. I am no means declaring I have necessarily that sort of maturity across the board, but I recognize that we need that maturity. And all of us as leaders need that maturity, and to work on our own frailties and weaknesses, and to come together and to do the very difficult emotional work. That is the point we're at now. But we have no choice. We have to do this thing, and we have to make it work. And we have to be innovative, creative, new thoughts, new ideas, radically new thoughts. We don't always have to think the same old way and think we'll get things done. So that to me, that is my mission, to be part of the leadership that shows that new, mature approach to leadership, to building bridges, and doing the emotional work, and even to take the blows if necessary, because that's part of the emotional work to make this thing work. And that's where we stand. And we have to do this thing. We have to do it now.
Well, certainly, I think that is correct. There has to be a concerted effort now. And you have to put aside all the other window dressings and so on, and get down now to people sitting down somewhere and talking and getting it done. That's what I think. Gabriel, I'm not sure that Thompson seems to have had some internet issues. I'm not sure whether he can hear us, whether he can speak to us, but he has some internet issues. So let me just go to you, Gabriel, and you'll give us your sort of final thoughts on your closing remarks as we wind down. I hope Thompson will be able to get back to us before we close up.
Thank you, Mr. G. I just want to endorse what Brother Ito said, and when he talked about unity, it's easy to say the declaration, Bernard, is the easiest part. You put down the salient points in a piece of paper and you call a press conference and so on. But after that, you have to have the emotional discipline, what they call the lalin in patois, the piéton is another patois term. I don't want to show off because if you ask me another one, I may not be able to say anymore. That's maybe my dictionary that I've used up. But you have to have the staying power and the patience. The patience. A lot of people, they come to one or two meetings and they don't see a result and they walk away. How long did it take to end slavery? Centuries. Some will say we still have not escaped mental slavery. I want to make a few points. To build unity and remove a dictatorship, install democracy, is to really create a new culture. That is hard. So it is important for us to focus on creating a sense of common purpose and shared goals so we can inspire our people. Number one, we have to establish clear communication channels, ensuring that everyone has a platform to voice their opinions and contribute to the conversation. So that can help to create the environment within which unity and collaboration can thrive. Number two, we have to highlight what are our shared values. Do we just want to remove Skerrit and put ourselves there? Or are we trying to build a new civilization within which each Dominican can feel dignified and worthy, and that they're part of a great, noble national purpose, shared values? So let us emphasize common values of integrity and honesty, the beliefs that unite us as a population, so that we can build a cohesive movement for change. Number three, let us provide educational awareness. A lot of people think it's about just, bloviating and talking loudly with a lot of profanity and so on. And that's not enough. Really, it's about educating ourselves, knowing our history. It's about a studied approach, getting our chemists together, or physicists together, or mathematicians together, or teachers together, or farmers together. We have to understand that this is about providing an education and awareness framework. And so by educating our population about the impacts of a dictatorship and the lack of democracy, we can exemplify that spirit of unity that we seek, that democracy that we seek. We cannot talk about democracy if we do not practice that culture ourselves, where we're closed-minded, where we're partisan, where we're biased. We have to be open-minded. Number four, foster inclusivity in leadership and among the led. We have to tell people in Dominica, stay away from the labels. We're not whiskey bottles. We're not bottles of beer. I want a Michelob. I want a Budweiser. Give me a Kubuli, Chebisau. That is not what we're about. We are human beings, and we want to say to our people, inclusivity in all things will help us, because we can only build upon holding hands and sharing ideas. And let us be willing to offer support and resources across the board. Let's not keep it, segmented. Segmentation does not help. And so I just want to conclude by saying what Bernard said, and I believe Mr. G, you'll agree with me, and Brother Thompson as well. In this thing, it's not a race for the swift. It's not a 100-yard dash. It's a marathon. Bernard, how many years has it been? I remember you from Nolte Park. That's in the 1990s. Thompson, well, go back to the 1980s. As for Mr. G, well, I remember him when he still had some hair on his head. Well, I can't talk much because I'm in the same school. And so he's still here at it. And he need not be at it. He could say, look, I've done my bit back when I was Guild of Graduates president at University of West Indies, not Caville, St. Augustine. I've done my bit. When I was DAIC in 1979, I've done my bit. He's still here. And Brother Lambie I've known forever. And so it's about being patient and knowing that if the objective is noble, to save the nation, we have to commit ourselves for the long haul. I want to just ask God's blessings on all of you and blessings on our country. And I am certain now more than ever that indeed we shall overcome. And that means, like Dr. King did, a campaign of civil disobedience based on education to say to the government, its time is up, that you're falling apart. And, for the good of yourselves, your families, and for all of us, common good as a people, just give it up and let's move on to electoral reform and go do something else. You've lost it. You've lost it. Thank you.
Thanks, Gable. And Thompson, I'll give you the final word. I'm glad that you're back with us. I hope that your mic is working and everything is working. Are you able to hear me, Thompson?
Yes, sure. Yes, I can. I just somehow got kicked out, but I'm thankful to be back.
Yes.
And just to conclude and to really say a big thank you to Gabe and to Bernard, to yourself, and to Lambi, and to our many listeners, and to showing behind the scenes, and to really, as we end tonight, to really focus on our country and the direction that we want for our country. I know we can never agree on about every single thing, but I think at the end of the day, we can all agree that this government has failed the people of Dominica, that we need a new direction, that we need a change basically in the country, and that we need to care more deeply about our young people in particular. We are very concerned about the trends that we see in our young people, the level of violence sometimes. I think we lost probably 16 young men last year through violence, killed at the hands of their friends, or, probably have some issues over drugs or whatever it was. A couple of them that I knew personally that we've lost. So I'm saying that we can do better as a country, and we need to do better, but we need to be more focused. Sometimes we spend a lot of time on unnecessary chatter, so much of conversation is spent about things that really does not promote or advance the cause, and people sometimes get very self-righteous in their own pronouncements. But at the end of the day, if you really look at what you are focused on, the question is that helping the cause? Is that helping to promote change in Dominica? Is that helping to draw people to the cause? These are the kind of things that we need to ask ourselves. And I just want to make an appeal to my fellow Dominicans to stay the course, to not lose hope. As Gabe said, it took many centuries to dispel slavery. It took a lifetime for Wilberforce for his own personal crusade to get that done. So sometimes change takes time. Getting people to change their mindset takes time. But what we should never do is to give up. And so I just want to encourage all of us to keep the faith, stay strong, and let us believe that the better days for Dominica are yet ahead. I have every conviction that our better days for this country is yet to come. But we're going through a process that we must go through, but we will emerge at the end of the day better and stronger as a people. Thanks and good night.
Yeah, well, I certainly agree, Thompson, that the Dominica's better days are ahead. But I believe that for Dominica to realize those better days, which is not realized for the last 20 years, you need a change of governance. You need a whole new direction, a whole new thinking, right? A whole new, it's a whole new paradigm shift, so to speak. And there are a lot of talented Dominicans in Dominica, outside of Dominica, who are willing to help. In fact, they are begging to help, but they've been excluded. I think it's time now to, as they said, to remove the big stone in the road, to remove the cancer that is preventing all these people from helping in their country, to get rid of that. Do what democracy dictates. Change your government from time to time, and especially when it's not working. If you can't get decent health care, you have a problem. If your students go out there and their fees cannot be paid, you have a problem. So it seems to me that the economy is in decline, you have a problem. So why is it that we do when you have a problem? You solve the problem and you remove the root cause of the problem. So my own thinking is that the right thinking Dominicans should put their heads together, no matter what it is, and put their heads together, put all things aside and make a resolve we're going to get together and get rid of this obstruction that is in the way of our progress. And we're going to chart a better course for this country. Leadership will emerge from it. I'm sure it will, because you see, you have leadership right here in our midst. And so all Dominicans need to decide, let's make this sacrifice. Put whatever ego it is on a side. Let's get together and make this thing happen. So Thompson and Bernard, I wish you guys good luck. I hope that in the days to come, we'll be hearing people putting their heads together. And let's see what emerges from that, because as they said, you guys are politicians. All politics is local. It's what happens on the ground that matters, in the constituencies, in the communities. But the people in those communities, they are suffering, and they need this suffering relieved. And I believe something can be done to relieve that suffering by improving the economy. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Mr. G, just quickly, sorry to interrupt, but talking about young people, it would be remiss of me not to congratulate Kavem Hodge and Alec Athenas, two Dominicans on the West Indies team. Alec got out for 13, but Kavem Hodge is there. Still, he's at the crease. So let's hope for the best for the West Indies team. 64 for 3.
What is Hodge's score now?
Hodge is on 1. He's been batting now for about 20 minutes or so, but he's taking his time, which is a good thing. No rush. Let's hope he can stay around for a very long time.
So how did Alec get out?
Alec got out. He left a ball that he thought was going to miss, but the ball cut right back in, and he shouldered arms, as they said.
Oh,
and
boy.
he got comprehensively bowled by Cummins. So
oh no. Yeah, this is so sad to hear that,
But it's just the beginning of the campaign, so
yes. So let's hope for the West Indies team and also for the young Dominican men that they will encourage generations of young sports people in Dominica.
Yeah,
like the glory days of cricket, we shall revive our best hopes.
Yes, indeed.
And in the same way, we shall revive our political glory days.
Indeed.
So it's a sign, it's a signal.
Gabo, did you know that Thompson was a wicket keeper?
Well, you have to be very swift, to catch that ball. Yes,
yeah, man.
You have a very, very good instinct, you have to go very good reflexes.
Yes, you have to have a good eye, man. I'm telling you. I effected some serious stumpings with an Indian who used to play for the Clemson team, Clemson University in a league in Atlanta, and I effected some serious stumpings, man, and off spinner from India, really, really good, and we had a really great combination,
Yeah, there's no U.S. cricket league, so cricket is coming here.
Yes. I remember keeping wicket for people like Chaucer Doctrove and Johnny Seller. Johnny Seller was a fast guy. He was big, he was strong, he was tall, and he was fast. And sometimes the guy would tell you, listen, man, I'm going to bowl one on the offside. I want you to come up to the stump. And because I'm going to try and get this guy. But this man was so fast, it wasn't funny. Yes. But, one of the people that I found was extremely good, and he never really made it to where he's supposed to go, was Chaucer Doctrove. This man could spin that ball. It was not funny. He was just very good. He was consistent, and he was not too bad at the bat either. So I had a few days playing cricket as well, Thompson, and being behind.
Nice.
All right, so gentlemen, I think we had a good discussion here tonight. I hope this can continue, and that I hope Dominicans can reflect on some of the things we said tonight and some of the things the callers said tonight. And really that the time is up. It's really time to do something now. I mean, we've been talking too long. It's really time for action now. Dominica needs something better than it does now. So good night, everybody. Good night, Lambi. Good night, all.
All right, guys. Good night.
Good night, gentlemen. Take care. Till next time.
Right. All the folks on Facebook who still with us, thank you for sticking with us for so long. And take care, gentlemen. Next time. Bye for now.
looking out my window and I'm a thinking of